everybody. Welcome. Welcome back to Legally Speaking. Oop. And that is why every lawyer should always carry a comb somewhere with them so that they don't have to look crazy for a little bit. Real quick, I need to shoot Wicked a message real quick, just thanking her. But let's, like I was just doing over on Welcome to the Rebellion. And guys, thank you all so much for the kind words over there. Jay told me about doing that 4 or 5 days ago. And, I was really excited. I was like, okay, let's go. We're going to pump this up. And then yesterday I started going, oh, okay, I'm starting to get a little nervous now. But I had a great time. I think we did pretty good. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Y'all let me know if you think we did good. Wicked, thank you so much. And until I get a new job, that is what we're going to be doing. If Jay needs help, I'm going to come calling. If he needs just a morning off, anything like that, I'll be there. Sort of like the end of Grapes of Wrath. I'll be there. I'm kidding. I never actually read the Grapes of Wrath. I just know about it because of the episode of Boy Meets World where they read it. My brother had to read it, though. Jose says, you know what? You should start a new show where you talk about movies with lawyers in court in it, like the movie Double Jeopardy, and trash it. Ooh, that would be fun. Marco, the jury's still out on whether or not he did a good job. Well, I'll wait to see what the judge Jay says. Okay, let's talk about Lindsay Clancy. Did I say it right this time? Yes, Lindsay Clancy. So I'm going to pull up our witch here so that, just to have something on screen. I kind of like that she looks crazy right here. So Massachusetts has what is called the McHall rule. It differs slightly from the McNaughton rule. The McNaughton rule is the general rule of insanity in the United States. It comes out of English common law. And it hang on, let me pull it up because I don't want to be wrong here. Is it conjunctive? Yeah. So they're both they're both. Holy crap! Metal Slave with 20 King's Court memberships over here. I don't have Rose Tico, but I do have this. From probably the second or third best movie of the 21st century. Metal Slave, thank you so much, man. So there's two main rules when it comes to insanity here in the United States. They are the McNaughton rule and the Model Penal Code. The McNaughton rule they're both or Model Penal and McNaughton are disjunctive, which means you really only need to prove one prong of the test. McNaughton says that the person did not know what they were doing was wrong, or hang on a sec. This looks like the penal code. All right, no, yeah. So that the person did not know what they were doing was wrong, or they did not know the nature of what they were doing. The penal code, which is very similar to the McHole rule, which I've got somewhere else. Let me pull that up. I thought I had it, but maybe I don't, because I didn't want to. I did not want to go too far in on Welcome to the Rebellion, because I didn't want. I didn't want to make it too boring, and I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole on a channel that isn't my channel. I kind of wanted to keep everything at like a 20,000 foot level. So McHole requires, like I said on Welcome to the Rebellion, McHole requires that the defense, or sorry, the plaintiff, the prosecution in this case, proves that the defense was not insane. Okay, so McHole turns everything around on McNaughton. McNaughton has a propensity of sanity. Says everyone starts sane, and the defense has to prove that they're insane. McHall in Massachusetts say the opposite. You can start insane, and then the prosecution has to prove that you were insane, or sorry, has to prove you were sane, which blows my mind. It completely turns around the requirements of what are they called? Affirmative defenses. An affirmative defense, like I said earlier, is a defense that the defense brings that is usually a complete defense, but because it's a complete defense, they have to prove it. Normally the defense doesn't have to prove anything. Normally the defense defends the prosecution's evidence, and it's on the prosecution to prove their case. That's why you see a lot of motions for summary judgments prior to cases, and then if the defense feels like the prosecution has not proved their case after the prosecution has rested, they'll move for a verdict, not with the verdict right there, saying the prosecution has not met their evidentiary proof. There's no way that a reasonable jury could find for the prosecution in this case. So McHall turns all of that around. Massachusetts must be wild. Shockingly, this never came up on the practice, which is too bad, because I feel like that would have made a great episode. But McHall says that the defendant must not appreciate the wrongfulness or the criminality of their conduct, or be able to conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. Now, here's the problem, okay? Because you read that and you say, okay, so the crazy person must be able to, or must be unable to appreciate that what they're doing is wrong, or they must be able to, or they can't conform to the law. Well, the problem is, if I was the defense here, I would argue the sheer fact that someone has committed the crime proves that they cannot conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. But the test does not look just at the event; it looks at the overall behavior. Now, it might not look, let's talk about her, for example. So, Lindsay, the information that I have, and someone, please let me know if I'm wrong about this. The information that I have says that throughout the day, she had been, she took her daughter to the doctor's office. I believe picked up lunch or something like that. Then sent her husband on some errands, was texting him during the errand saying, hey, go get this, go get this. Had looked up how long does it take to get from that CVS or Walgreens back to my home, all that stuff. Well, that is evidence that she understood what she was doing was not within the law, that she was conforming her conduct to the law. She did not, she sat quietly in the waiting room at the doctor's office with her daughter. She answered all the questions. There was nothing to make the doctor think that she was going crazy or in a manic episode. So that, for me, that discounts the second thing. The first one I think is completely out the window, that cannot appreciate the criminality or wrongfulness of her actions. She threw herself out a window after she killed her children. There's no way that you can argue that she was unable to appreciate that what she did was wrong. She tried to end her life. That is the definition of appreciation. Like, it blows my mind that you can have these people sitting there thinking that the whole postpartum depression stuff, and this is another problem. Okay, so doctors diagnosed her depressed. Okay, they diagnosed her with depressed and with postpartum. Okay, my understanding is there are two different levels of, two sides of the same coin. Okay, they did not diagnose her with bipolar disorder, which is what the defense is trying to claim that she had. And they're trying to claim that so that they can argue that they don't really need to prove that the switch got turned off or on, because it's assumed with bipolar disorder that that's what happens. That's one of the what do you call them? Not symptoms. What? Let's do symptom. That's one of the symptoms of postpartum or bipolar disorder, is that switch can get flipped on and off whenever. But again, there's nothing in the record, at least that I have seen. Now, they have a decent argument, especially today. But they've got a decent argument. And this is honestly, in my opinion, the argument they should be standing on. And the argument that the crazed people should be standing on. That a combination of the postpartum depression and the sheer amount of medications she was on. I mean, it was 13 different medications. Like, of course that's gonna, I think you would have a majority of people not being okay with her, not saying, oh, it's not your fault. But I do think you'd have a good number of people that felt bad for her. Maybe not supported her, but felt bad for her. Because there is never before has there been such a distrust of the medical industry than there is right now. And I think if they had leaned into that distrust and been like, look, we're not sitting here saying, woe be unto her, this is not fair, she didn't do it, any of that stuff. But we do believe that a combination of the hormones that women deal with after giving birth, and a combination of all of these drugs that her doctor prescribed to her, created a bomb that went off. That's a reasoned argument. And that's an argument that I think would play very well both in a jury and with expert witnesses and with the general public. The problem is you get people like this crazed woman and all the other ones, all the women that were wearing the pink shirts with the little stupid heart stuff, saying, this is actually his fault. He didn't support her. All of this stuff, we have multiple evidence of him supporting her. He drove her places. He started working from home, all of this stuff, so that she would be able to get the help that she needed. There is way too much evidence to discredit the idea that she was not supported at home by her husband. That's the other reason why I tend not to go too far into these trials, is because then I kind of end up being like a Judge Judy or a what do you call it? Maury. Hey, Jose, because you bring this up, and feel free not to, if you don't want to comment on it, totally fine. So postpartum psychosis is rare, but my wife got it and when she had our third child. Is that not something that does go away? Like, I mean, the third child was 8 months old. Shouldn't it have? Shouldn't she have been better by then? Like, I know that there's a lot of women out there that have really hard times after they give birth, and there's women that have a lot of hard time after they go back to work, and or they kind of move on from being the constant 100% always there mother. But it just seems to me that um 8 months later is just too much. So for her, it went away after a month and a half. Yeah, that's just insane to me. I mean, look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know enough about it to say it is absolutely only something that lasts X amount of time. Zwani says, yes, it typically does. My depression went away within 6 months. I wasn't on any meds. So, so Gabe, this thing, it's not my understanding of it. Again, not a doctor, didn't go to med school, not really interested enough to spend a lot of time reading about it. But I've looked into it a little bit, and it's not like it's something that, okay, every woman doesn't give birth the exact same every single time. Some women, they'll have a very easy first birth and a very difficult second birth. And the more difficult, I mean, I won't say this is causation. I think there's a correlation there. But the more difficult a birth, the more kind of crazy your hormones go. And there are a lot of women out there that their hormones go crazy depending on, but it doesn't depend on the birth. Like, it's not like, your hormones go crazy on that first birth and then after that they're always fine. My argument for it's her third kid, this is BS, is it's your third kid. You should have known by then. This is how these are the things that I need to watch out for. How do I ask for help? Those kind of things are stuff that you should be aware of, and I would hope that you would be aware of at your third kid. But in general, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule over X number of kids means, or X number of birth means this is how your hormones will react and stuff like that. Clyde for 5 says, you should get your medical license while you're waiting for a call. Dude, no. Doctor, not me. Sean, I think you're pretty damn close there. I think she's evil and just trying to avoid accountability. I think that this is a case of the devil won. And now she doesn't want to go to prison. Well, I can understand not wanting to go to prison. I don't want to go to prison. But to sit there, well, and the other thing I would be interested to see, and again, because I haven't watched the press conferences and stuff, I don't know if they've done this, but I would be interested to see how the defense is reacting to these crazed people. Are they promoting it? Are they like, thanks so much for your support? Have they commented on the $1.2 million GoFundMe? Those are the things that, like, it blows my mind. I'm not shocked at all that Carmelo Anthony's family raised $700,000. Not shocked at all. There's millions of people in this country that would have given him money for that. I am shocked that a woman can murder her kids and people and women all over the country will go, let me give her money because she's a woman. That blows my mind. That's honestly, for me, I think that says more about this country and where we're going than I think anything else does. And that's why I say repeal the 19th Amendment. No. So Sean, Carmelo doesn't really shock me because it feels like it does feel like there's sort of a tribalism here in this country in a level that we haven't really seen in a long time. And it just doesn't surprise me to see people give money to support him just because he's black. It just doesn't surprise me. But what does surprise me is women supporting someone that murdered their children. Those two things I think are way too different. Sean says, I think every amendment after the first 10 should be put back up for reapproval via the same process. I think we've had this conversation before. So, Sean, I'm just going through them right now. So you would remove the 22nd Amendment? Oh, okay. Well, I've talked about it before with someone. So 22nd Amendment limited presidents to 2 terms. So you remove okay. I've never really had a problem with the 22nd Amendment. Well, so Sean, this is the let's play devil's advocate here. The purpose behind the amendment the amendment process that the founders created is because they knew that they wouldn't think of everything, and that things would change in the future, and they and things would need to change. So, okay, they said that we don't need term limits. They didn't put term limits in the Constitution. Do you not think we need term limits? Now, my argument again, I've had the same argument as term limits for a while, and it's a very similar argument that Gabe here has for president. If I have a good congressman, I shouldn't lose him just because he's been in Congress for 3 terms. Being a good senator or a good congressman requires a bunch of different things. Lindsey Graham was an excellent senator when it came to constituency work. There is probably no one in Congress in the last 30 years that was better at constituency work than Lindsey Graham. That's one of the reasons he continued to win. Okay, because he was excellent at it. But his lust for war was terrible. So I would say that removing the 19th and the 26th, 19th guaranteed the right to vote, and 26th lowered the voting age to 18. Removing those two things fixes a lot of issues. I still think that at the end of the day, you should have to own property and not be on the government's teat to vote. Those should be the main things. You should probably have to be of a certain age. So, if you were 16 and you already owned a house, I don't really think you need to vote at 16. So let's say, but then also, what you're gonna say someone can go to war and fight for the country? They're old enough to make that decision, but they're not old enough to vote. There are decent arguments against a lot of this stuff. The problem is that there's stupidity on every single level of every single thing. So you fix a lot of stuff by repealing the 19th, because not everyone should vote. Not everyone should be able to vote. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, universal suffrage is the downfall of the West. And I think you start with the 19th. And I think you make the rule, own property. And I don't know if you would have to put it in the amendment or you would wait for the courts to kind of carve it. But you need to not be on government assistance. But I don't think, let's say, so I got laid off last Monday. Okay. If I had gone to the unemployment office, got onto unemployment, I don't think I should immediately lose my right to vote. Okay. I think that if I, Spirian, have a great day. I really hope dialysis goes well, man. I think that if I sit on government assistance for months and years, then yes, remove my right to vote. But I think if I go and get on government assistance for, a month and then get a job, that's very different. Shockingly, Jose, I disagree with required military service. I do. I'm not a fan of required anything. Hang on, let me think about that. Yeah, no, I don't think I am. I understand what you're saying, Sean. Now, maybe you make it government service where you can kind of pick, let's say a required something. Now, I don't know how long you do that. I don't know how long the required service needs to be. One of the reasons why South Korea, Israel, Switzerland, I think those are the only three that have a required number of years in the military, is because A, they're very small, and with the exception of Switzerland, they've got people that don't like them right next to them. That's one of the reasons why it. Deb says, I'm financially independent, own multiple properties, am educated and based. Why would you want to forfeit my vote? I don't want to forfeit your vote. The 19th Amendment does not guarantee, does not say that women are now able to vote. Women could still vote. You just had to, there were just stuff you had to do. You had to own property. You had to be over the age of, was it like 25? In the UK, I think it was 32 you had to be. in order to vote prior to their election stuff. But here, I think it was like 25, maybe 28. You had to own property, and there was like one or two other things. But no, I mean, just because anyone should be able to vote as long as they do certain stuff. I don't think simply existing and being 18 years or older should give you the right to vote. And that's why a lot of people are saying repeal the 19th, not because they don't want women to vote. Turkey has a 2-year requirement. Okay. I didn't know that. That kind of makes sense, but I didn't know that's interesting. So where were we? Yeah. So get rid of those 2 or 3 things, I think goes a long way. I do think we need to kind of get back towards a let's call it a 1910 way of life. There is okay, y'all are gonna laugh at me. Who has watched Downton Abbey? Common morality test. Okay. So I love Downton Abbey. Okay. I started watching it with my mother. Sunday nights we'd watch that, and then she passed away. I kept watching it. It's just something that kind of connects me back to my mom. And there is the matriarch, the grandmother, played by what's her name? Minerva McGonagall from Harry Potter. She has an argument in the show that the purpose of great families, or one of the purposes, is to provide employment. Okay. I think I agree with that. I think the purpose of, or maybe not the purpose, but one of the goals of being successful in America should be to help your community, your state, your nation, whatever, your town. So when I see companies that go out of their way to hire non-Americans, it infuriates me. When I see companies that decide we're going to take profit over people when they don't need to. Look, I am as big a capitalist fan as I think there could be. Okay. But I think capitalism for the sake of capitalism is a bad idea. I think when you don't, and I don't know where those lines have to be drawn. I don't know whether it's a law, whether it's just having good men in charge. I don't know how you do it. Okay. I am not going to be the one to make those decisions. It's not going to happen, because for all I know, I'd make the wrong one and we'd fuck everything else up. But there is a line between automation and keeping certain jobs. And it, who's heard of that song? They're shutting Detroit down. I think there's an argument to be made that a lot of the problems that the automotive industry has had over the last decade is they are unwilling to pause automation. They keep pushing more and more automation, and that's pushing more and more actual people out. And Jose kind of hit on the head here, is that people want cheap labor. They're not willing to pay for what people are worth. And there are a lot of companies, I think, that just kind of stopped caring about their employees in like 2005. I remember being, driving around 2010 and, going to get lunch with a friend. And I where do we go? We might go to Wendy's, okay? And there's a sign there that says, $9 an hour. 2010, I'm sitting there thinking, I had just started a job making minimum wage, and $9 an hour. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, man, I'd love to do that, but I wasn't going to work food and bev. And then we went from Wendy's to go get an ice cream cone at Sonic, and Sonic's sign said like base pay $19.50 an hour. My sister's boyfriend at the time was making like $21 an hour working at Sonic, and he was just like working there. He wasn't a manager or anything like that. And they were a company that was like, we need the best people doing this stuff. They still had the car hoppers. They were still on skates, all this stuff. And so that's an example of a company really wanting everything to be cool, clean, nice. You notice over the last 10 years, Sonic's gotten a lot crappier. It's not nearly as clean as it was. It's not nearly as kind of fun to go to. It used to be the place that every high schooler that I knew would go. They would go from there. They'd go hit up happy hour at Sonic, get that small slushie, go home and do their homework. That's what a lot of us did in my high school. There was a Sonic near my high school that we would go out of our way. Well, I won't say out of our way, but any chance we had an opportunity to go hit up their happy hour, because it was like $1.80 medium slushy. Everyone's got that in their change thing in their car. So, Polly, you're 100% right. The assumption that men are good is the problem. Bible says men are not good. That is why God gave us moral laws. Government, capitalism, none of these things work if we rely just on men being good. Yes, you need to have good men in charge. And those good men are good because they know that without God, without Christ in their life, they are not good. A return to morality needs to happen. Now, this is such not a normal legally speaking conversation. I love it. How you get back to that is going to require a huge thing. Honestly, part of me really thought that as we're coming up on the year anniversary of it now, part of me thought that after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, that there would be kind of a revival in this country. And we've seen pockets of it, for the last couple of years, we've seen revival take place at Ohio State for many years. It's been really kind of cool to see. It's the only prop I'll give to Ohio State. But it's really sad when the pushes that happen, the shifts that happen in culture, they seem to, for the right, and when I say the right, I mean more like godliness. They seem to shift slower or not as far as shifts for the left. I mean, that can be explained several ways. One that I like to explain is just, the left wins because the left is evil, and evil is going to win before God wins in the end. We already know that. Gabe's also right that too many regulations on businesses are a huge problem. I remember there's a speech that Ronald Reagan gave at a Barry Goldwater event back in like '64, where he talked about how medical innovation in this country had stagnated. That for every 10 years ago, so 1954, we were putting a new drug on the market or finding a new cure or something every like 320 days, and it was costing $1 million a thing. And the FDA creates all these new regulations and all this stuff, and in '64 it was taking 2.5 years and costing $10 million. Well, it is hard. It is kind of hard to argue against the, go back and look at the history of medication. Um, you'll see uh, just absolute craziness in medicines that at the beginning were thought to be great. Look at oxycodone, look at Vicodin, all those opioids. Go back 20 years before that, you've got Quaaludes, and is that's like the 80s, isn't it? You've got there's that other drug that was basically like heroin. Um, go back before that, you've got literal cocaine, all these different things um, that were prescribed just in an insane level. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of a push. You've got a need for there to be some sort of oversight, but we've got way too much of it now. Yeah, you probably just drank some tea, dude. Let's see. I want to get. I didn't use all of Jay's things. Let's see what else did Jay send me. Oh, let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about the trade deal that died Saturday night. So you got a whole lot of people. I pretty much agree. There's some federal regulation that I think is a good idea. That I think at the end of the day helps us in a longer term. One of them, so I think I'm right about this. Someone let me know if I'm wrong about this. But there used to be a rule that said you had to have X amount of money in your stock portfolio or something like that in order to do like day trades or something like that. Am I right about that? It might not have been day trading. It might have been like the more complex trading, like shorting and things like that. Nailed it on the head right there. Yep, there you go, Jose. Anybody know if I'm right? Jose says you need to have at least $5,000. Now, is that to do day trading or is that to do like the crazy things that you do a whole bunch of like shorting and super risky trades? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the federal government saying, look, trading is a very complex thing. And the normal person, we do not want to risk John's, tiny amount of money that he takes home after bills and everything each day, and with him trying to get rich quick, because we understand that there's that huge temptation, and we want to do what we can to prevent that. Okay, I'm good with that. Okay, I am. I hate the increased amount of sports gambling we got going on. I think that's terrible. I think it's a moral issue of the day. The sheer amount of gambling going on in this country is insane. But what I don't think is that the federal government should be able to come into my house. Let's say I own 132 Main Street. Okay, nice little house. I don't think they should be able to come in there and tell me, you can't your toilet needs to be this size so that it only flushes X amount of gallons of water. I think that's ridiculous. I understand the premise. I understand the point is to try to alleviate the pressure on the water treatment plants and things like that. I get that. But to require it by the power of the state, I think is a problem. Give a what's it called? Give a rebate. Say, hey, well, Sean, feds or state, potato in general, government in general, these new toilets exist. They're going to make your water bill a little bit cheaper, and they're going to help us. If you install one, we'll give you $200 to do it. I'm good with that. Incentive. Thank you, Deb. Incentives. I'm okay with that. Especially because for the most part, if you go and look at most states' budgets, the incentives they have on them are usually a very small portion of the budget. Incentives rarely, like if you were to cut every state's incentives compared to that state's budgets, you're talking probably less than 1%. That's what I'm saying, Paulie. And give me an incentive, but let me decide what I'm going to do in my home. Yeah, Sean, rebate was the wrong word. I meant incentive. Let's see. I'm trying to think about what else I got to talk about. Right. So the Canadian deal apparently fell through Saturday night, I guess. I honestly, did anyone else know that this was going on? I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know that there was a trade issue or deal being made between Canada and I kind of figured there was still something going on, but I didn't know that there was a Saturday midnight deadline. But apparently the big issue here, there have been people on both sides that have spoken about what the thing that broke the camel's back was, because everyone basically said, this thing's going to get signed tonight. And then this thing popped up. Canada has been unwilling to really enforce the rules of steel in North America. So America has a kind of rule regarding steel. It has to be made in North America. What that means is any steel used has to be melted down and formed in North America. And Canada was unwilling to do that with the steel and aluminum they were selling to America. They were buying up at cheap prices Chinese steel, which not good steel, and selling it to America, claiming that it went through the North American process, and it just wasn't. And that's a big problem. I mean, I can't imagine. So y'all have probably seen the videos and of like Chinese construction where someone's like walking around a bridge or something and they kind of hit it and it looks like that concrete is actually what's it called? Styrofoam. Now I don't think it's actually styrofoam, but the kind of breakdown of Chinese infrastructure we're seeing at a much higher rate than we are in America. Now, which is concerning because a lot of the American infrastructure that we're seeing get broken down today is, 70 years old. Whereas the infrastructure we're seeing in China that's starting to break down is like a decade old. That's concerning. I don't want any part of that over here. Now, again, all that really needs to happen to fix the Chinese problem is a bunker buster at Three Gorges Dam, but we don't need to talk about that. I'll tell you, China has a very serious problem. I'll tell you what I'm intrigued about with China. And I've got one more topic to talk about today, guys, and then we're probably going to wrap up in about 20 to 30 minutes. I don't tend to go very long on Legally Speaking on my morning shows. It's usually about an hour and a half. And we're going to be doing this after Welcome to the Rebellion every day. So y'all come on over. I'd love, if y'all want to tell people in the chat, hey, he's not a complete idiot. Feel free. We're all going to disagree about some things. Sean and I regularly disagree. It's never violent. It's never anything, drastic. But we disagree, and disagreement is good. It's what moves things forward. Holy fuck, dude! They did so that Freedom 250 race yesterday. They did more than just one flyover. They did another flyover with a B2 and B1s. Like, that's so cool. I forgot it was this past weekend. I wanted to go to that. I thought it was next weekend. Un Piquino. Hang on one sec. Thank you, Swanee. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the last thing I'm going to talk about. So South Carolina has a primary tomorrow between Darlene Graham Norden and Ralph Norman. Darlene Graham, the current senator for South Carolina that is filling her brother's seat, because that's the way it works, whether it's a good or bad thing. The what do you call it? The norm has always been when a sitting senator dies, his wife or finishes the term. Well, or finishes the term up to the election. Lindsey Graham was not married, famously, so his sister is finishing his term. Well, she has hopped into this race with all sorts of kind of illicit money behind her, and she doesn't know anything. She would be a terrible senator. She was asked a question at the debate last week. What do you consider? What is your concern over Taiwan? And she basically says, national defense is not, I don't really know anything about it. National security is not something I know anything about. So I'll have to come back and give you a different answer. You're trying to become a senator of the United States in a very big military state, and you can't give us an answer over something that you knew was going to, there's not a chance in hell that your staff did not know that they were going to ask about Taiwan, and you couldn't come up with an answer for that. The other problem is in the previous debate, like a month ago, all of her answers, cue cards, she just read them off cue cards. So she has been a great disappointment. This is her talking about how, so the person that's off camera who's filming this is trying to ask her opinion about flock cameras, which y'all know how I feel about this shit. Flock cameras are a big no-no for me. I think they are a terrible idea. I think they are a huge invasion of our privacy. They're a Fourth Amendment violation, all this stuff. And her entire opinion kind of boils down to, well, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. And then she asks, are you recording me? It bothers me that you're recording me without my permission. Do you not get the problem here? You're okay with Flock recording me, but you're not okay with me recording you, a public servant, one of the highest public servants in the country. I hope Ralph Norman kicks her ass. Now, look, I'm not saying Ralph Norman is not a career politician. He spent 10 years in the South Carolina House of Representatives. He spent 9 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. He's probably going to spend about 12 years. He'll probably have 2 terms in the United States Senate. He is the definition of a career politician. But there is not a argument to be made among the people that he has represented that he has not done a good job representing them. When he was in the South Carolina House, he represented his district beautifully. He fought long and hard to get infrastructure fixed up there. Everything that needed to get done, he fought to get done. Now, not all of it got done. That's the way it works. You don't get everything you want. But he did a good job. When he was representative for the 6th district, I believe that's his district. He did a very good job for them up there. And the thing that really kind of pisses me off about this is Trump. Trump's really annoyed me with all this. Now, my understanding is, and this could just be a deep state political bullshit lie, but my understanding is that he and Lindsay really did like each other. That they actually were pretty good friends in the end. And he may feel that it's really his job to side with his friend's sister. Okay, I can get that. Like I can wrap my head around that. But to act like Ralph Norman has not been on your team since day one, that's what gets me upset. So, and Trump did the same thing in his endorsement of Pamela Abbott for governor here in South Carolina. He talked about how Henry McMaster and Pamela were number one on his side, all this stuff. Alan Wilson, who was running and is now the Republican nominee for governor, literally led the charge for you in multiple lawsuits throughout both your term and your first term and Biden's term. Literally helped lead the fight for MAGA, Republicanism, whatever phrase you want to use. And you sided with Pamela Abbott from Ohio to help rule South Carolina. That a lot of people are going to be upset or will be upset about that for a while. I don't know who's advising him on. He seems to have done a good job in, like Indiana, for example, where, I think it was 7 of the 8 people he sided with won their primaries, and my understanding is favored to win their general election. Maybe he's doing a good job there. I don't know, because I don't live in Indiana. I don't know their politics. Okay, I don't know if do they like the those 7 of the 8 guys. I don't know, but he has 2 of his endorsements here in South Carolina have been really suspect, and I've been really annoyed about them. Does that mean that I think Donald Trump is not the answer for something, or do I think that we would be better off with what's her name, the wino? No, absolutely not. I would, dude. Can you imagine what a shit show this place would look like if that wino was in charge? and look, it's been a pretty big. We've been seeing in the news a lot lately, but the last time the budget was balanced, it was a '90s Democrat that did it. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that we should have Bill Clinton in charge and Newt Gingrich in charge of the House? I don't know. I'll let God decide that. Look, at the end of the day, God wins. That's that's a pretty good point too, buddy. I said this the other day. I think this will probably be, unless I find something interesting while I scroll through Twitter. I said this the other day that wow. The sheer amount of insanity in this country is because of the Democratic Party. I have a lot of issues with decisions the Republican Party has made and all that. But the stupidity, the evilness that we have seen has come out of the Democratic Party. Look, the power that the Democratic Party has and had and has to this day is that they made it feel good to vote Democrat. Okay, they spent decades being the party that was for for the little guy, was for being nice to people. Oh, your country's ruined. Of course, we'll accept you. Of course, you can come to the land of opportunity. We hold our lamp by the golden door. Of course, we'll help you. They spent decades doing that. And honestly, if they had kept doing that, the big problem is the Democratic Party in 2010 stopped kind of policing itself. It thought it never needed it thought it had it all. And it stopped kind of pushing down that more crazy wing of it and saying, whoa, yo, whoa, you can't say that in public. It's like the Shane Gillis skit or sketch about the Special Olympics, where he's like, can you imagine the first person to pitch that idea? Dude, we should be racing these kids. Can you imagine, like, if that was your friend that just said that to you, you'd look at them and say, dude, don't ever say that again. Like, that's what the Democratic Party used to do. Someone would pitch a crazy idea and they'd go, dude, shut the fuck up. That's why so many of their splinter groups, so many of their splinter parties were absorbed real quick into the national politics. So that the people that were popular in those splinter groups couldn't rise to more national fame. Now, the internet has really done away with the ability to do that. That's why you see the Hassans and the AOCs and stuff like that becoming more and more and more popular. But what the Republicans really need to prioritize here is showing just how fucking nuts they are. Who's Carville? Is Carville the weird LSU fan? The old guy? Aha! Yeah, he said something the other day that he was like that he would never vote Democrat again, didn't he? Oh, that's funny. Okay. Okay, guys, I think we're gonna call it there. I don't really see anything. Quitter. Guys, y'all have a great night. Thank y'all for being here again. Thank y'all so much for the support over on Welcome to the Rebellion this morning. Jay, we'll be back tomorrow. But I'll be back here tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow after Welcome to the Rebellion. We're going to talk about more stuff. Hopefully some fun stuff happens in the next 24 hours. But until then, holy shit. 73 transmit, shows up, drops a 50, and just salutes. Damn, boy. Thank you so much, dude. Damn. Y'all have a great night. Great day. Great day. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Don't forget, in the end, we win. Hang on. Because now Clyde drops a 10 and says, when does Jay get to do Legally Speaking for your birthday? Well, the reason I did Welcome to the Rebellion is because he's traveling. So if I have to travel, maybe. But the problem is Jay's not a lawyer. So he can't really do Legally Speaking. So, like, that's why. Like, I could do Welcome to the Rebellion because I have opinions. But Legally Speaking sometimes requires an actual attorney's perspective. Not all the time, though. I'll agree on that. Y'all have a great day. True. Good night, guys. Not good night. Jeez. I'll see y'all in like 2 hours. We'll play some more video games. Peace out.